The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a gentle shudder. Jake Murphy stood at the observation window and watched the alien world grow larger in front of him. The planet was beautiful, with purple oceans and silver clouds that sparkled in the light of two suns. He had seen pictures before, but nothing prepared him for seeing it with his own eyes. "Pretty amazing, isn't it?" Captain Helen Brooks said, as she walked up beside him. She was a tall woman, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been in space for 30 years and had seen a lot of things, but even she seemed impressed. "Yeah," Jake said. "Hard to believe we're actually here." The Zephyrian Empire had contacted Earth 3 months ago. They were an old civilization, much older than humanity. They had technology that humans could only dream about, but they wanted to talk to Earth, to make friends, and maybe do business together. That was why the Horizon's Edge was here, carrying diplomats and scientists to meet with the Zephyrian royal family. Jake was not the most important person on the ship. That was Ambassador Peter Grant, a serious man who wore expensive suits and never smiled. Jake was just a cultural liaison, someone who was supposed to help the two species understand each other. He had studied alien cultures in college and spent 5 years working with the few alien races that humans had already met. He was good at his job, mostly because he was friendly and did not take things too seriously. "Remember the briefing," Captain Brooks said. "The Zephyrians are very formal. They have strict rules about how to talk to each other, especially royalty." I know, Jake said. "Bow when meeting them. Use their full titles. No casual talk." "I've got it." The captain gave him a look that said she was not entirely sure he had it, but she nodded and walked away to prepare for landing. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the landing bay wearing his best suit. It was navy blue and made him look more professional than he felt. Around him, the other members of the diplomatic team were also getting ready. Ambassador Grant was checking his notes for the 100th time. The scientists were quiet and nervous. Everyone knew this was important. The ship landed smoothly on a platform made of some kind of white stone that seemed to glow from within. When the doors opened, warm air rushed in, carrying a sweet smell like flowers. Jake followed Ambassador Grant down the ramp and got his first look at the Zephyrians. They were tall, much taller than humans. The shortest one was at least 7 feet high. Their skin was smooth and had a soft glow to it, like moonlight on water. They wore long robes covered in detailed patterns that seemed to move and shift. Their faces were similar to human faces but more angular, with large eyes that had no white in them, just solid colors ranging from gold to deep purple. A group of Zephyrians waited at the bottom of the ramp. The one in front wore robes of deep blue and silver. He was very tall and held himself with perfect posture. "Welcome, honored guests from Earth," he said in perfect English, though his voice had a musical quality to it. "I am High Chancellor Veltoran. On behalf of the Eternal Emperor and the Zephyrian people, we greet you with respect and hope for understanding between our peoples." Ambassador Grant bowed deeply. "We are honored to be here, High Chancellor. I am Ambassador Peter Grant, representing the United Earth Government. We come in peace and friendship." The formal speeches went on for a while. Jake stood behind the ambassador and tried to look professional. He noticed that none of the Zephyrians smiled or showed much emotion at all. They were polite but distant, like talking to very sophisticated robots. After the speeches, the Zephyrians led them through a massive palace. The halls were huge, with ceilings so high that Jake could barely see them. Everything was beautiful but cold. There were no paintings or decorations that showed any personality. It was all very perfect and very empty. They were taken to a great hall, where more Zephyrians waited. At the far end of the room, sitting on a raised platform, was the Emperor himself. He was ancient, his glowing skin dimmed to a soft silver, but his eyes were sharp and intelligent. The Emperor spoke to Ambassador Grant about trade and cultural exchange. Jake listened, but found his attention drifting. That was when he noticed her. She stood to the left of the Emperor's throne, wearing robes of pale green that made her skin glow brighter. She was younger than most of the other Zephyrians in the room, and there was something different about her. While the others stood perfectly still, she shifted her weight slightly from foot to foot. While the others stared straight ahead, her eyes moved around the room, taking everything in. High Chancellor Veltorin noticed Jake looking and leaned closer to whisper. "That is Princess Lyria Velshara, the Emperor's third daughter. She has been assigned to be your cultural liaison counterpart. You will work together during your stay." Jake nodded. After more formal talk, the meeting ended. The humans were shown to their rooms to rest before dinner. But before Jake could leave, a servant approached him. "The princess requests your presence in the East Garden for introduction and discussion," the servant said, in a formal tone. Jake followed the servant through more hallways until they reached a garden. It was beautiful, filled with plants that glowed softly in the fading light of the twin suns. The princess stood near a fountain, her hands folded in front of her. Jake walked up and bowed as he had been taught. "Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you." The princess looked at him with those large golden eyes. "The honor is mutual. Cultural liaison, Jake Murphy. I have been assigned to learn about human customs and to teach you about our ways. I hope we can work together successfully." Her voice was formal and stiff, like she was reading from a script. Jake smiled, trying to put her at ease. "I'm sure we'll do great. And hey, you can just call me Jake." The princess's eyes widened. Somewhere behind them, the servant made a small, gasping sound. That would not be appropriate," the princess said slowly. "We must maintain proper formality in all interactions." "Right, sorry," Jake said, though he did not really understand what he had done wrong. "I'm still learning your customs." "Yes," the princess said. She looked at him curiously. "You are very different from what I expected." "Different how?" "Your data files said you were a trained diplomat. But you seem very casual." Jake laughed. "I guess I am. Humans are pretty casual compared to you guys. We don't stand on ceremony as much." Ceremony and proper behavior are important," the princess said, but there was something in her voice. It was not quite conviction. It sounded more like she was repeating something she had been told many times. They talked for another hour. The princess asked careful questions about Earth and human culture. Jake answered as best he could, trying to tone down his natural friendliness to match her formality. But it was hard. Every time he relaxed even a little, the princess seemed to tense up, like she was worried he might do something shocking. When the twin suns finally set and the garden was lit by glowing plants and floating lights, the princess said, "We should return. The formal dinner will begin soon." As they walked back together, Jake thought about how strange this all was. The Zephyrians were advanced and intelligent, but they seemed trapped by their own rules. He wondered what it would be like to live in a place where you could never relax, where every word and gesture had to be perfect. The princess walked beside him in silence, her glowing skin casting soft light on the path. Jake did not know it yet, but their conversation in the garden had been the beginning of something that would change both of their lives and the relationship between their two peoples. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest moments, like a human diplomat who could not help being friendly, and an alien princess who was curious about what life could be like beyond the rules. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Every morning, Jake met with Princess Lyria in different parts of the palace. They would talk about their cultures while servants and guards watched from a respectful distance. The princess was always perfectly formal, always correct in every word and gesture. But Jake noticed small changes. On the 5th day, when he accidentally called her, "Your Highness," wrong, she corrected him with what might have been the tiniest hint of a smile. On the 8th day, she asked him a question that was not from the official list of approved topics. She wanted to know what human families were like, how parents and children talked to each other when they were alone. Jake told her about his own family. His mom, who always worried too much, and his dad, who told terrible jokes at dinner. His younger sister, who texted him constantly with updates about her college life. He described Sunday dinners where everyone talked at once and argued about everything from sports to politics, but always with love underneath it all. The princess listened with an intensity that made Jake think she was hearing about life on another planet, which he supposed she was. "Your family members address each other without titles?" she asked. "Well, yeah. I call my parents Mom and Dad. They call me Jake. My sister calls me Jake, or sometimes, Dummy, when she's annoyed with me." The princess's skin flickered brighter for just a moment. Jake was learning that this was how Zephyrians showed emotion, even though they tried to hide it. And this does not show disrespect? No, it shows love. Using someone's name means they're close to you. It means you don't need formal stuff between you. The princess was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "That is very different from our ways." Jake learned about Zephyrian culture too. The princess explained that centuries ago, her people had been very emotional. Too emotional. They had wars that almost destroyed their entire civilization. These wars were not fought over land or resources, but over feelings, pride, and passion that burned too hot. After nearly going extinct, the survivors decided that emotions were too dangerous. They built a society based on control, on rules, on keeping everything calm and orderly. "So you just stopped feeling things?" Jake asked. "No," the princess said. "We still feel. But we control those feelings. We do not let them show. We do not let them rule us." "That sounds lonely." The princess's glow brightened again, and she looked away. "It is safe." On the 12th day, they were walking through a gallery filled with ancient Zephyrian art. The princess was explaining the meaning behind a large sculpture when Jake interrupted her. "Can I ask you something personal?" The princess hesitated. Personal questions were not really part of their formal cultural exchange. But she nodded. "Are you happy?" Jake asked. The question seemed to startle her. She stood very still, her glowing skin pulsing slightly. "Happiness is not. We do not focus on such things. We focus on duty, on serving our people, on maintaining harmony." "That's not an answer. It is the only answer I have." Jake felt bad for pushing, but he also felt like someone needed to ask her these things. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You did not," the princess said quietly. Then, even more quietly, "No one has ever asked me that before." After that conversation, something shifted between them. The princess started to relax more when they were together. She still maintained her formal posture and careful speech, but there were moments when Jake caught glimpses of who she really was underneath all the rules. She was funny. When she thought no one was watching except Jake, she would make small observations about the palace officials that were surprisingly sharp and amusing. She was curious about everything, asking questions about Earth that went far beyond the official cultural exchange program. She wanted to know about music and art, about how humans celebrated and mourned, about what made people laugh. Jake showed her videos from Earth on his tablet. He showed her concerts where thousands of people sang together. He showed her comedy shows that made her glow brighter with what he was sure was suppressed laughter. He showed her videos of his family's last reunion, where everyone hugged and talked over each other, and his uncle told the same stories he told every year. "You touch each other so much," the princess observed. "Hugging, holding hands, touching shoulders when you talk. Yeah, that's normal for us. It's how we show we care. Zephyrians do not touch casually. We only touch for ceremony or for..." She paused, her skin glowing brighter. "For bonding rituals between life partners. That's it? You only touch people if you're married to them? Or family, when we are very young. But even then, it is limited." Jake felt a wave of sadness for her. "You've never just hugged someone because you were happy to see them?" "No." Without thinking, Jake reached out and gently touched her arm. It was just a friendly gesture, the kind of thing he would do with any friend. But the princess gasped and pulled back as if he had burned her. Her skin flared so bright that Jake had to squint. "I'm so sorry." Jake said quickly. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to. It is fine, the princess said, but her voice shook slightly. I was simply surprised. Your hand was warm. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then the princess did something unexpected. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and touched Jake's arm in the same spot where he had touched hers. Her hand was cooler than human skin, but not cold. It felt smooth, almost like touching water. Like this? She asked. Yeah, Jake said softly. Like that. She pulled her hand back quickly, but Jake saw her skin glowing brighter, pulsing with colors he had not seen before. He was learning to read these changes. This was not embarrassment or fear. This was wonder. The palace officials were starting to notice the changes in the princess. Jake overheard conversations in the hallways. Some of the advisors were concerned that she was spending too much time with the humans, that she was learning behaviors that were not appropriate for Zephyrian royalty. One afternoon, Jake was summoned to meet with High Chancellor Veltoran. The tall Zephyrian looked even more serious than usual. Cultural Liaison Murphy. I must speak with you. About the princess. Is something wrong? Jake asked. That depends on your perspective. The princess has been observed, laughing. She has been seen walking with less formality. Yesterday, she addressed a servant without using proper title forms. Is that bad? It is not how Zephyrian royalty behaves, the Chancellor said. We understand that you are teaching her about human customs, but she must remember that she is not human. She has duties and expectations. Jake felt defensive. She's just learning to relax a little. There's nothing wrong with that. She's a bit of Cleebly. IR. She's a bit of Clee. And she's a bit of Clee. 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 She's a bit. You do not understand our culture. Maybe not completely. But I understand that she seems happier now than when I first met her. Is that such a terrible thing? The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Happiness is not the goal. Stability is the goal. Order is the goal. But Jake noticed something in the Chancellor's voice, a tiny crack in all that formality. Maybe some Zephyrians were not as sure about their rules as they pretended to be. That evening, Jake met the princess in their usual garden. She seemed troubled. I heard you met with the Chancellor, she said. Yeah, he's worried about you. He is worried that I am changing. Are you? The princess looked up at the darkening sky where stars were beginning to appear. I do not know. I feel different when I am with you. When you tell me about Earth and your family and how humans live, I feel something I cannot name. It is like being asleep my whole life and suddenly being half awake. That doesn't sound bad. It is not bad. But it is frightening. What if I wake up completely and realize that everything I have been taught is wrong? What if I cannot go back to the way I was? Jake did not have an easy answer for that. I think being awake is better than being asleep, even if it's scary. The princess turned to look at him. In the dim light, her glowing skin was beautiful. You have changed my life, Jake Murphy. I do not know if I should thank you or blame you. Jake smiled. Can't it be both? And then, for the first time, the princess truly smiled back. Not a formal expression for diplomacy, but a real smile that made her whole face light up. It only lasted a second before she controlled herself again, but Jake had seen it. Things were changing. The question was whether the Zephyrian Empire was ready for those changes. The formal state dinner was scheduled for the 4th week of the human delegation's visit. It was meant to be the high point of the diplomatic mission, where both sides would celebrate their growing friendship and discuss the details of trade agreements. Ambassador Grant had been preparing for weeks, making sure every word of his speech was perfect. Jake wore his dress uniform, which was uncomfortable but made him look official. He stood with the other humans in a receiving line as Zephyrian nobles entered the great dining hall. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to go up forever. A long table made of white stone ran down the center, set with crystal dishes that glowed with soft light. Princess Lyria entered with her father the Emperor and her two older sisters. She wore formal robes of deep purple and gold, much more elaborate than what Jake usually saw her in. She looked beautiful but distant, back to being the perfect Zephyrian princess. When her eyes met Jake's, there was a flicker of warmth, but she quickly looked away. The dinner began with ceremonial toasts. The Emperor spoke about friendship between worlds. Ambassador Grant gave a careful speech about cooperation and mutual respect. Everything was going according to plan. Jake was seated near the middle of the long table, between a Zephyrian trade official and a human scientist. The food was strange but good, dishes that tasted like nothing on Earth. The Zephyrian nobles ate in perfect silence, every movement precise and controlled. It made Jake nervous. He was used to dinners where people talked and laughed and argued. This felt more like a ceremony than a meal. About halfway through dinner, things started to go wrong. A Zephyrian noble across the table, Lord Kavresh, began asking Jake questions. At first, they seemed innocent, just curiosity about human customs. But the questions got more pointed, more aggressive. Tell me, Cultural Liaison Murphy, is it true that humans often engage in physical violence as entertainment? Jake tried to answer carefully. We have combat sports. Yes, but they have rules and safety measures. How barbaric, Lord Kavresh said, loud enough for others to hear. We Zephyrians evolved past such primitive displays millennia ago. A few other nobles murmured in agreement. Jake felt his face getting hot, but he kept his voice calm. Every culture has different forms of entertainment. I don't think that makes any culture better or worse. Of course you would say that, another noble chimed in. Humans are so emotional, so uncontrolled, like children who have not learned discipline. Jake bit back an angry response. He could feel the dinner going off track, but he did not know how to fix it. Ambassador Grant was too far away to help, and Captain Brooks was giving him a warning look that clearly meant, don't make this worse. Then, Lord Kavresh made his big move. He stood up and addressed the Emperor directly. Your Majesty, I must speak of something that concerns many of us. We have observed that Princess Lyria has been spending considerable time with the humans, particularly with this one. He gestured at Jake. She has been learning their undisciplined ways. Some say she has even been seen laughing openly and touching surfaces without proper purification rituals. The room went completely silent. Jake saw Princess Lyria's skin flare bright with emotion, though her face remained calm. The Emperor looked at his daughter. Is this true? Before the princess could answer, Lord Kavresh continued. Furthermore, earlier today, this human was observed in the sacred garden, picking flowers without permission. This is a grave insult to our traditions. The sacred garden is for ceremony only, not for casual plucking by outsiders. Jake's mind raced. He had not been in any sacred garden. He had not picked any flowers. This was a lie, and an obvious one. But before he could defend himself, Lord Kavresh held up a flower, one of the rare white blooms that Jake had seen pictures of in his cultural briefings. I found this in his quarters during a routine inspection, the Lord said. That's not true. Jake stood up, his voice too loud for the formal setting. I've never been in any sacred garden, and I certainly didn't take any flowers. Someone is lying. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Humans did not shout in formal Zephyrian settings. Jake had just made things worse. Ambassador Grant stood up quickly. Your Majesty, I apologize for my colleague's outburst, but I must also state that these accusations seem questionable. Cultural Liaison Murphy has been nothing but respectful during our entire visit. Respect? Lord Kavresh's skin glowed dark red with anger. This human has corrupted a princess of the royal family. He has violated our sacred spaces, and now he stands here and calls me a liar in front of the Emperor himself. Other nobles who shared Lord Kavresh's views started speaking up, their voices overlapping. The careful diplomacy of the past weeks was falling apart. Jake could see the years of potential friendship between humans and Zephyrians crumbling because of a lie. Then Princess Lyria stood up. The room fell silent immediately. A princess standing during dinner was unusual. A princess speaking without being directly addressed was almost unheard of. "Father," she said, her voice clear and strong. "May I speak?" The emperor looked surprised but nodded. "You may." Princess Lyria turned to face the assembled nobles. The room erupted again. Several nobles gasped. Others glowed bright with shock. No one called a High Lord a liar, especially not in front of the emperor. "I know he is lying because I know exactly where Jake Murphy has been every day for the past 4 weeks. We have been together for cultural exchange sessions. He has never been to the sacred garden. He would not know how to find it, as it is not marked on any maps given to the human delegation." Lord Kavresh's skin flickered with dark colors. "Princess, with respect, you have been spending too much time with these humans. They have clouded your judgment." "No," Princess Lyria said, and her voice was stronger now. "They have cleared my judgment. For the first time in my life, I can see clearly. I can see that these accusations are false. I can see that some of our people are afraid of change and are willing to lie to prevent it. And I can see that we have become so obsessed with control and formality that we have forgotten what it means to be honest and open." The emperor raised his hand for silence. "These are serious accusations, my daughter. Lord Kavresh is a respected member of this court. He is also afraid," Princess Lyria said. "Afraid that humans will show us a different way of living. Afraid that our people might want something more than rigid rules and emotional suppression. Afraid that if we truly become friends with Earth, we might have to look at ourselves and question whether our way is the only right way." She turned to Jake, and for the first time in public, she looked at him with real warmth. "Cultural liaison. Murphy has shown me what it means to be genuine. He has never pretended to be something he is not. He has been kind and patient while learning our ways, even when our ways must seem strange and cold to him." Jake felt his throat get tight. He wanted to say something, but this was her moment. Princess Lyria looked back at her father. "I understand if you are disappointed in me. I understand if the court thinks I have behaved improperly, but I will not stand here and watch a good person be falsely accused, because some nobles are too afraid to accept that humans might have something valuable to teach us." The emperor was quiet for a long time, his ancient face impossible to read. Finally, he spoke. "Lord Kavresh, how did you gain access to the human quarters for your inspection?" The lord's skin flickered with dark colors again. I had authorization from the Security Council. The Security Council reports to me, and I gave no such authorization." The emperor's voice was cold now. "And the sacred garden is watched by security monitors. It would be simple enough to review those recordings and see if any human has entered." Lord Kavresh's skin went completely dark. He had been caught in his lie. The emperor stood, and everyone immediately bowed. "This dinner is concluded. Lord Kavresh, you will present yourself to my chambers tomorrow morning. We will discuss your future at court. As for the human delegation, please accept my apologies for this unfortunate scene. You remain our honored guests." As the nobles filed out in tense silence, Jake caught Princess Lyria's eye. He wanted to go to her, to thank her, to tell her how brave she had been. But protocol kept them apart. She gave him the smallest nod, and he saw her lips move silently. He could not hear her, but he read the words, "We will talk soon." Later that night, Jake stood in the human quarters with Ambassador Grant and Captain Brooks. They were discussing what had happened and what it might mean for the diplomatic mission. The princess took a huge risk, the captain said. She made enemies tonight. She also showed incredible courage, Ambassador Grant added. But I worry about what this will cost her. Jake did not sleep well that night. He kept thinking about Princess Lyria, standing up in front of everyone, risking everything to tell the truth. She had done it for him, but also for something bigger. She had done it because she believed that honesty and genuine connection were more important than maintaining comfortable lies. The next morning, a servant brought Jake a message. Princess Lyria wanted to meet him in the garden where they had first talked. When Jake arrived, he found her sitting by the fountain, still wearing her formal robes from the night before. She looked tired but somehow lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Hey," Jake said softly as he approached. The princess looked up at him, and for the first time since he had met her, she smiled openly without trying to control it. Then she laughed. A real, genuine laugh that made her whole body glow bright with joy. "Hey, sweetie," Jake said without thinking, the casual term of endearment slipping out naturally. The princess's glow intensified, and her skin flushed with colors Jake had never seen before. She covered her face with her hands, laughing harder now. "Yes, dear," she said through her laughter, trying out the human phrase she had heard him use before. "Yes, dear. You have completely destroyed my ability to be a proper Zephyrian princess." And somehow, standing in that garden with her laughter echoing off the walls, Jake knew that everything had changed. There was no going back now, for either of them. The news spread through the Zephyrian Empire like fire through dry grass. Princess Lyria had defended a human in front of the entire court. She had accused a High Lord of lying. She had spoken about emotions and change and questioning the old ways. Within 3 days, it was the only thing anyone was talking about. Jake watched it happen from inside the palace walls. Young Zephyrians began gathering outside the palace gates, their skin glowing with excitement. They held signs written in both Zephyrian and English. Some said, "Truth over tradition, and let us feel again." The older generation was horrified. They called it a crisis, a breakdown of social order. The emperor called a meeting of the High Council, and Princess Lyria was summoned to attend. Jake was not allowed in the council chambers, but he waited outside with Ambassador Grant and Captain Brooks. They sat on a bench in the hallway for 3 hours while raised voices echoed through the thick doors. When the princess finally emerged, her skin was dim, almost gray. She walked past them without speaking, her head held high but her glow betraying her distress. Jake started to follow her, but the High Chancellor appeared in the doorway. "The humans are requested to attend," he said formally. Inside the council chamber, the Emperor sat on his throne, looking older than Jake had ever seen him. Around the room stood various council members, their skin showing different colors of emotion. Some glowed red with anger, others pulsed with anxious yellows and greens. "Cultural Liaison Murphy," the Emperor said, his voice heavy with tiredness. "Your Majesty, I never meant to—" The Emperor raised a hand to stop him. "I know. You were simply being yourself, being human. That is not a criticism. But intentions do not change consequences. My daughter has become a symbol of rebellion. Half the Empire sees her as a hero, bringing necessary change. The other half sees her as a traitor to our most sacred values." Arian, Ambassador Grant stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if our presence is causing problems for your people, we can discuss shortening our visit." "It is too late for that," one of the council members said sharply. "The damage is done. The princess has shown that it is possible to question everything we have built. Young people are already abandoning proper protocols in the streets. Some have been seen embracing each other in public." The way he said, "embracing," made it sound like a crime. The Emperor spoke again. "I have made a decision regarding my daughter. The princess will be given a choice. She must either commit fully to traditional Zephyrian ways, including entering into a formal bonding with Lord Kavresh's nephew to restore the honor she damaged." "What?" Jake could not stop himself from interrupting. "You're going to make her marry someone as punishment?" "It is not punishment," the Emperor said. "It is restoration of order. The alternative is that she may choose to give up her royal title and position. She would be exiled from court, free to live as she wishes, but no longer representing the royal family. Jake felt sick. That's not a choice. That's forcing her to choose between being herself and her entire life. That is the nature of all important choices, the Emperor said sadly. My daughter has until tomorrow evening to decide. You humans have 3 more days at the palace, and then your diplomatic mission will conclude. I suggest you use that time to say your goodbyes. The meeting was over. Jake walked out of the council chamber in a daze. This was his fault. If he had just been more careful, more formal, if he had not let himself become friends with the princess, none of this would have happened. Captain Brooks found him an hour later, sitting alone in an observation room staring at the purple ocean below. She sat down beside him without saying anything for a while. You're thinking this is your fault, she finally said. Isn't it? No. You were asked to do cultural exchange, and you did it honestly. The princess made her own choices. Choices I influenced. Jake, listen to me. I've been in space for 30 years. I've seen a lot of first contact situations. Sometimes cultures meet and nothing changes. Sometimes they meet and everything changes. You can't control which it will be. All you can do is be honest and hope for the best. What if the best isn't good enough? Jake asked. The captain did not have an answer for that. That night, Jake tried to sleep, but could not. He kept thinking about Princess Lyria having to choose between everything she had ever known and the small taste of freedom she had experienced. It was not fair. But then again, a lot of things were not fair. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on his door. When Jake opened it, he found Princess Lyria standing there. She was wearing simple robes instead of her formal attire, and her skin glowed softly in the dim hallway. Can we talk? She asked quietly. They walked to the garden where they had spent so many afternoons together. The twin moons were full, casting silver light over everything. They sat by the fountain, and for a long time, neither spoke. I am sorry, Jake finally said. I'm sorry I ruined your life. You did not ruin my life, Princess Lyria said. You showed me that there was more to life than what I had been taught. That is not the same thing. But now you have to choose between being a princess and being yourself. That's not fair. No, it is not fair. But it is real. She looked at the water in the fountain, watching the light play across its surface. Do you know what the hardest part is? It is not choosing between 2 different futures. It is realizing that I cannot go back to who I was, even if I wanted to. You cannot unknow something once you know it. You cannot unfeel something once you have felt it. What will you choose? Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. I do not know yet. If I choose to remain a princess, I will bond with someone I do not know, spend my life following rules I no longer believe in, never laugh or touch anyone casually or speak honestly about what I feel. But I will still be part of my family. I will still have purpose and position. And if you choose exile, then I will be free to be myself. But I will be alone, cut off from everything I have ever known. My family will not speak to me. I will have no role, no purpose. I will just be me. And I do not even know who that is. Jake felt his chest tighten. You wouldn't be completely alone. The human delegation will leave in 3 days, Princess Lyria finished. Yes. And then, what? I cannot go to Earth. We do not have that kind of relationship between our worlds yet. So, I would be here, on this planet, an exile, with nowhere to go. The young people gathering outside the palace, Jake said. They support you. Maybe you could lead a revolution? Princess Lyria laughed, but it was a sad sound. I am not a revolutionary, Jake. I am just someone who wanted to laugh without feeling guilty about it. I wanted to have a friend I could be honest with. That does not make me qualified to change an entire civilization. They sat in silence again. Jake wanted to fix this. to find some solution that would make everything work out. But he could not think of anything. Sometimes, life did not have easy answers. "If I could do it over," Princess Lyria said softly, "knowing it would end like this, I would not change anything. These past weeks with you have been the happiest of my life. That must count for something." Knowing, Jake took her hand without thinking. He half expected her to pull away, but she did not. Instead, she squeezed his hand gently, her cool skin against his warm palm. "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met," Jake said. "I do not feel brave. I feel terrified. That's what makes it brave." They stayed in the garden until the first sun began to rise, turning the sky from purple to orange to pink. Princess Lyria finally stood up, still holding Jake's hand. "I need to think," she said. "I have until tomorrow evening to decide who I want to be. That is not a lot of time to figure out an entire life. Whatever you choose," Jake said, "it will be the right choice. Because it will be your choice. Made honestly." She smiled at him, and her skin glowed warmer. "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who makes friends too easily." "Yes," Princess Lyria said. "You are exactly that." She left him there in the garden as the second sun joined the first in the sky. Jake stayed for a while longer, watching the palace come to life around him. Somewhere in those ancient halls, a princess was making the hardest decision of her life, and there was nothing he could do to help her. The next day passed in a blur of formal meetings and preparations for the delegation's departure. Jake barely paid attention. He kept watching for Princess Lyria, but she did not appear. The whole palace seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for her decision. Evening came. The emperor summoned the entire court to the great hall. Jake stood with the other humans, his heart pounding. Princess Lyria entered through the main doors, walking slowly down the long aisle toward her father's throne. She wore robes of pure white, which Jake had learned was the color of truth and decision in Zephyrian culture. The hall was packed with nobles, advisors, and servants. Outside, Jake could hear the crowd of young Zephyrians who had been gathering for days. Everyone wanted to know what the princess would choose. Princess Lyria stopped in front of the emperor and bowed deeply. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. "I have made my choice," she said. The room was silent enough to hear a pin drop. Jake found that he was holding his breath. "But before I announce it," Princess Lyria continued, "I ask permission to speak to this assembly about why this choice should not have to exist at all." The emperor looked surprised, but he nodded. "Speak," and Princess Lyria began to talk. Not in the formal, stiff way she had been taught, but honestly and from the heart. She talked about what she had learned from the humans, about connection and authenticity. She talked about the history of her people, about how their rules had saved them from self-destruction, but had also trapped them in a kind of living death. She talked about the possibility of finding balance between emotional freedom and destructive chaos. She talked for 20 minutes, and the whole time, her skin glowed brighter and brighter with the passion of her words. When she finished, there was not a sound in the room. Then, from outside, Jake heard voices. The young Zephyrians were chanting something. It took him a moment to make out the words. "Choose yourself. Choose yourself. Choose yourself." Princess Lyria looked toward the sound, then back at her father. "I choose myself," she said. "But I also choose to serve my people. I ask you, Father, to create a new role. Let me be a bridge between the old ways and new possibilities. Let me help our people learn to feel again without losing the wisdom that has kept us safe. Let me be what the humans call a cultural ambassador." The emperor was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, his skin began to glow with a warm golden light that Jake had never seen from any Zephyrian before. "My daughter," he said, "when did you become so wise?" And for the first time in his long life, the emperor of the Zephyrian Empire smiled. The palace erupted in chaos after Princess Lyria's announcement. Some nobles glowed with dark, angry colors, while others pulsed with surprised yellows and curious greens. Outside, the crowd of young Zephyrians cheered so loudly that the sound echoed through the stone halls. The emperor raised his hand for silence. But it took several minutes for everyone to calm down enough to hear him speak. "This is an unprecedented request," the emperor said. "The High Council will need to discuss what this new role would mean, what authority it would carry, what boundaries it would have." Lord Kavresh, who had been standing in the back of the hall since his disgrace, stepped forward. Despite his recent humiliation, he still had the right to speak in council. "Your Majesty, this is madness. We cannot create positions simply because a princess has developed emotional attachments to aliens. Our traditions exist for good reasons. Our traditions exist because we made them," Princess Lyria replied. "And if we made them, we can change them when they no longer serve us." "Easy words from someone who has been corrupted by human influence," Lord Kavresh said. His skin glowed dark red. "You speak of balance, but what you really want is to tear down everything our ancestors built." "No," Princess Lyria said calmly. "I want to honor what our ancestors built, while also acknowledging that we have become so afraid of our past mistakes that we have stopped living. Our people are not happy, Lord Kavresh. They are safe, yes. They are orderly. But they are not happy. The young people gathering outside this palace right now are proof of that." An older council member spoke up, her skin glowing with soft purple concern. "But Princess, you must understand our fear. When our people allowed themselves to feel freely, we nearly destroyed ourselves. Entire cities burned because of passionate disagreements. Families were torn apart by uncontrolled emotions. How can we risk returning to that?" "We do not have to return to that," Princess Lyria said. "Humans feel deeply, but they have not destroyed themselves. They have anger, and sadness, and jealousy. Yes, but they also have friendship, and love, and joy. They have learned to feel, without letting those feelings consume them. Perhaps we can learn from them." Jake watched this exchange, feeling both proud and worried. Princess Lyria was magnificent, speaking truth to power without backing down. But he also saw how many nobles were glowing with dark colors of resistance. Change would not come easily to the Zephyrian Empire. The Emperor looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he turned to the High Council. "We will discuss this matter tonight. The Council will meet in private session. Princess Lyria, you will wait in your chambers for our decision." The assembly was dismissed. As people filed out, Jake tried to get close to Princess Lyria, but guards surrounded her and led her away. She glanced back at him once, and he saw worry in her eyes despite her brave words. The human delegation was escorted back to their quarters. Ambassador Grant paced back and forth, his formal composure cracking. "This is either going to be the greatest diplomatic breakthrough in human history or a complete disaster. I cannot tell which. Both, probably," Captain Brooks said. She was drinking tea and looking remarkably calm. For someone whose entire mission hung in the balance. The big moments always are. Jake could not sit still. He kept thinking about Princess Lyria, waiting alone in her chambers, while a group of old nobles decided her fate. After an hour of pacing, he could not take it anymore. "I need to see her," he said. "Jake, that's not a good idea," Ambassador Grant said. "We need to let the Zephyrians handle this internally. She shouldn't have to face this alone." "She's not alone," Captain Brooks said gently. "She has her father. And from what I saw today, the Emperor is on her side. That matters more than anything we could do." But Jake remembered the look in Princess Lyria's eyes, and he knew Brooks was wrong. Sometimes you needed more than political allies. Sometimes you needed a friend. The High Council met through the night. Jake dozed fitfully in a chair. Jerking awake, every time he heard footsteps in the hallway. Ambassador Grant gave up pretending to sleep around 3 in the morning and joined Jake in his vigil. They did not talk much, just sat together, in the quiet darkness, waiting for news. Dawn was breaking when High Chancellor Veltoran finally came to their quarters. He looked exhausted, his skin dim with tiredness. The Emperor requests the presence of the human delegation in the Great Hall. They followed him through empty corridors. The palace felt different in the early morning light. Softer, somehow. When they reached the Great Hall, they found the Emperor sitting on his throne with Princess Lyria standing beside him. She looked tired, but her skin was glowing with cautious hope. The High Council members stood around the room in a semicircle. Most of them still glowed with uncertain colors. But Jake noticed that some of the younger council members were brighter, more alive than he had seen before. "We have reached a decision," the Emperor said. "It was not unanimous, and it was not easy. But we have agreed that my daughter's proposal has merit." Jake felt his heart leap with hope. Princess Lyria will assume the new title of Ambassador of Cultural Unity. The Emperor continued. "She will work with both traditionalists and reformers to find ways for our people to explore emotional expression without losing the stability that has kept us safe. She will also serve as primary liaison to humanity and any other species we encounter in the future." Princess Lyria's skin flared bright with joy, then quickly dimmed as she controlled herself. But Jake saw the real smile she tried to hide. "However," the Emperor said, and his voice grew stern, "this role comes with conditions. The princess will be monitored closely for the first year. If the council determines that her work is causing more harm than good, the position will be dissolved. She must demonstrate that change can happen slowly and carefully, not through revolution." "I accept those conditions," Princess Lyria said immediately. "There is more," the Emperor said. "Lord Kavresh has been removed from his position for his deception and for attempting to sabotage diplomatic relations. However, he represents a significant portion of our population who are deeply afraid of change. The princess must find ways to address those fears, not dismiss them." "I understand, Father." The Emperor looked at Jake and the other humans. "As for your delegation, we have decided to extend your stay if you are willing. We would like the princess to work closely with your cultural experts as she develops her new programs." Ambassador Grant stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, we would be honored to assist in any way we can." "Good." The formal meeting ended. But as everyone began to leave, the Emperor called Jake back. "Cultural liaison. Murphy. A word. In private." Jake's stomach clenched with nervousness as the others filed out, leaving him alone with the Emperor. The ancient ruler studied him with those sharp eyes. "My daughter cares for you greatly," the Emperor said. "I am not sure what form that caring takes, whether it is romantic or simply deep friendship. I am not sure she knows either. Emotions are new to her, and they are complicated." "Your Majesty, I never meant to cause trouble?" "Yes, I know. But you did cause trouble, Jake Murphy. You came to our world with your casual warmth and your easy friendship. And you showed my daughter that there was another way to live. You cannot undo that, even if you wanted to." "I'm sorry," Jake said. Not sure what else to say. "Do not apologize," the Emperor said. And for the first time, Jake saw real warmth in his expression. "You gave my daughter something precious. You gave her the courage to be herself. As her father, I am grateful for that, even though as Emperor, I am troubled by the chaos it has caused." He stood up from his throne, and without the formal setting, he looked less like an all-powerful ruler and more like a tired old man. "Take care of her, Jake Murphy. She is stepping into unknown territory, and she will need friends she can trust. Can you be that friend?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. The Emperor nodded. "Then we understand each other." Jake was dismissed. He walked through the palace corridors in a daze until he found himself in the garden where so much had changed. Princess Lyria was already there, standing by the fountain with her face turned up to the morning suns. "Hey," Jake said softly as he approached. She turned, and her face broke into a huge smile. "Hey, sweetie," she said, and then laughed at her own use of the casual phrase. "You did it," Jake said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Princess Lyria corrected. "I could not have found the courage without you." They stood together in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Princess Lyria reached out and took Jake's hand, weaving her fingers through his. The gesture was so human, so natural, that Jake felt tears prick his eyes. "I am going to fail sometimes," Princess Lyria said quietly. "I am going to try to change things too fast, or not fast enough. I am going to make mistakes because I am learning all of this as I go." "Everyone makes mistakes," Jake said. "That's part of being alive." "Yes, dear," she said. And they both laughed at the running joke that had started by accident and become something meaningful between them. Over the next few months, Princess Lyria threw herself into her new role. She started small, creating discussion groups where Zephyrians could talk about emotions in a safe setting. She brought in human teachers who gave classes on emotional intelligence and healthy expression. She even convinced her father to allow some Zephyrian young people to visit Earth as cultural exchange students. Jake stayed on as her primary human advisor, though officially he was still just a cultural liaison. They worked together every day, and their friendship deepened into something neither of them could quite name. It was not quite romance, though there were moments when it might have become that. It was not quite just friendship either. It was something new, something that fit them both perfectly. The changes happened slowly at first. Some younger Zephyrians started smiling in public. A few brave souls began using casual greetings instead of formal titles with their friends. There was resistance, of course. Some traditionalists protested. A few temples closed their doors to anyone who participated in the new emotional expression programs. But more and more Zephyrians began to see the value in what Princess Lyria was trying to do. 6 months after that fateful state dinner, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the city with Princess Lyria. Below them, they could see Zephyrians gathering in a new public space that had been created for casual social interaction. Some were sitting in groups talking. A few were actually touching each other on the shoulders or arms in friendly gestures. And Jake could hear something he had never heard before in a Zephyrian city. Laughter. "Do you see that?" Princess Lyria said, pointing to a group of young Zephyrians who were playing some kind of game together. 3 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Games are supposed to be solitary or formal competitions only, but they are just playing for fun, for the joy of it. "How do you feel about all this?" Jake asked. Princess Lyria thought about it. Terrified, excited, hopeful, worried, happy. Sometimes all of those things at once. "Is this what humans feel all the time?" "Pretty much," Jake said with a grin. "It is exhausting," Princess Lyria said. "But it is also wonderful." She leaned against Jake's shoulder, another casual gesture that had become natural between them. "Thank you for being patient with me while I learn all of this. I know I still do things wrong sometimes. I still forget that it is okay to laugh or to touch people or to speak casually." "You're doing great," Jake said. "Better than great. You're changing the world." "For me, we are changing the world," she corrected. "Humanity's gift to my people is not technology or military alliance. It is the reminder that feeling deeply is not the same as being destroyed by feelings. That emotions can be strength instead of weakness. That being genuine is better than being perfect." "That's pretty good," Jake said. "You should write that down." Princess Lyria laughed, that full, genuine laugh that Jake loved to hear. "You know what the funniest thing is? All of this, all these massive changes, all this cultural revolution that is reshaping an entire civilization, it started because you casually called me sweetie, and I did not know how to handle it. Hey, in my defense, that's just how I talk to friends." "I know," Princess Lyria said. "That is what makes it so perfect. You were not trying to be revolutionary. You were just being yourself. And that was enough to change everything." They stood together on the balcony as the twin suns set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange and pink. The city below them glowed with the bioluminescence of thousands of Zephyrians. But now that glow seemed warmer, more alive, pulsing with emotion that was no longer hidden. "What happens next?" Jake asked. "I do not know," Princess Lyria said. "But I know we will figure it out together. Humans and Zephyrians, learning from each other, growing together. It will not be easy or quick or perfect, but it will be real." "Yes, dear," Jake said with a grin. "It certainly will be." And in that moment, standing together as two worlds slowly learned to understand each other, they both knew that this was just the beginning. The friendship between humanity and the Zephyrian Empire would face challenges ahead. There would be setbacks, and conflicts, and misunderstandings, but they had proven something important. That genuine connection could bridge even the widest cultural gaps, and that sometimes the most powerful revolutions started with the simplest gestures of warmth and friendship. Jake had come to the Zephyrian homeworld as a minor diplomat on a routine cultural exchange. He was leaving as something much more important. A true friend to a princess who had found the courage to change her world, and a symbol of what humanity had to offer the galaxy. Not superior weapons or advanced technology, but something far more valuable. The courage to be genuinely, messily, beautifully human, and the reminder that being alive meant more than just being safe. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, "Anything. Promise me you will never stop being exactly who you are. Do not let formality or protocol or fear change you. The galaxy needs people who are brave enough to just be themselves." "I promise," Jake said. "On one condition." "What is that?" "You promise the same thing." Princess Lyria smiled, her skin glowing with warm golden light. "Deal." And with that simple promise, a human and an alien stood together under unfamiliar stars, proof that friendship and authenticity could overcome any barrier, and that sometimes the best thing you could offer someone was just to look them in the eye, smile warmly, and say, "Hey, sweetie," with genuine affection. The rest, as they say, was history.